Hello everybody, today we're looking at Disquiet Gods by Christopher Ruocchio, book 6 in the Sun Eater series. I have the beautiful backdrop of Dao Tian Link over here, but the sunlight's kind of bright today, so you maybe don't get that beautiful view. Disquiet Gods is definitely a continuation of the Hadrian Marlowe saga. A lot to love here, more of the same. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. There's a lot to love here. And if you've been liking how the series has been going, book 6 is going to definitely be a banger for you. There's going to be a lot of revelations, there's going to be a lot of world building, a lot of different story mechanisms that will definitely blow your mind. However, if you're looking for something a little bit different and you have a little bit of the Hadrian Marlowe fatigue, maybe this will hit a little bit less for you. So overall, I gave this 4.5 out of 5. You should read this if you have been loving the epic Hadrian Marlowe saga and just want more of the same. I mean, that's basically it. And for me, just the one thing that's keeping this from a masterpiece science fiction saga for me is the lack of seen character arcs. And I think that's a continuation here. We have a lot of character arcs in this series. I think sometimes it's unseen character arcs. We have a couple of characters return in this book that, again, they have developed, but you're not part of that journey. So, and although maybe you can read a short story or one of the novels in between, that lack of character arc and Hadrian Marlowe being the main focus, now going 6 books straight, makes it a bit difficult for me being able to name it a masterpiece. I think 7 books is a long time to follow one character specifically. But again, it's just a little nitpick, but I definitely felt the Hadrian Marlowe fatigue in the first half of this book, and part of the reason might be is I'm sifting through this series very quickly. I started book 1 in middle of December, and now I'm on book 6 here, and it's been a pleasant journey. So let's start with the strongest category by far, which is plot, which I gave 4.75 out of 5. For epicness of the series, this probably is up there with book 3 in Demon in White in terms of epic space battle, epic political intriguing, all of the different parts kind of conjoining into one. Then you have the different plot mechanics of the Watchers. Like, there's so many of the big story elements kind of converging into one here that makes the plot super epic and super, even though it was 700 pages, I definitely blew through those last 400 because it was just like a Sanderlanche, you know, like revelation after revelation after revelation. So that was very enjoyable. And with the prose and dialogue, I also gave 4.75 out of 5, and this is some of the best in the series. I think Hadrian Marlowe in this book specifically has a bit of a turning point in this series, a turning point that I was not exactly expecting based on the arc of the series. And that's kind of, again, I've said that in previous reviews, that's kind of the tension, right? Where sometimes the author, Marlowe, is writing in such a way that kind of hints at the future, like we're told the future, and the tension is always this, how that future is going to come true. After reading book 1, we just kind of think that it's just him destroying an entire sun, but now with the different plots happening, the plot thickens, the water's muddied. We're not sure exactly how it's going to get there. Neither does Hadrian Marlowe. He keeps seeing glimpses, and he thinks he's making decisions. He doesn't believe in fate now. So that tension is very, very well done. It's one of the best I've seen in a book where kind of the future can be foretold or seen. The tension here is very good. So, and that continues in this. And other things about prose and dialogue, just the political intriguing and the negotiations that happen in this book is awesome. If you love that stuff, you're really going to love it here. Also, I think Ruocchio has definitely gotten better book by book. I feel quite confidently saying that the dialogue and also the relationships of Hadrian Marlowe with other characters. There's one character specifically here, without providing a spoiler, straight from the beginning, that development and seeing a different side of Hadrian was very enjoyable, and it really needed that at this conjunction of the series. I think that was very important, and all things like that. So, and Hadrian and some certain characters, interactions, one with a villain and one with old friend, those were very, very good. And just, you know, Christopher Ruocchio, everyone says this, knows how to write. This is kind of what The Name of the Wind should have been. And again, I do have some nitpicks, but this is like, everybody should read the science fiction epic. If you're a science fiction fan, you're missing out on a classic here. And again, I think some people, this book series kind of started off very hard sci-fi, and it's one of those series that's kind of like, sometimes I feel it's like more sci-fi-ness-y, and then other times I'm like, it's like more hard sci-fi. It's like always flipping, and some of those might flip based on revelations, but again, I was leaning towards more of a 4.25 based on some of the plot mechanisms with the Watchers. I'm not a big fan of when it goes that big, right? You know, if you've been reading up to this point, you know what I mean. The Watchers, I'm not, when it's that big, when we're talking about entities that are that big, it's intriguing, but then when it's like such a thorough part of the plot, it can be, I don't know, a bit disengaging for me, especially when I'm reading something a bit more hard sci-fi. And another point I have to make, I think, and this might go back to world building, but this is the best series I've read when it comes to putting value on basically like a lightsaber, right? Like a saber that is more for, like a saber that has this kind of power to cut anything, kill anything. This is the best mechanism I've seen of that. The material that's being used, the explanation of that, the rarity, all of these different kinds of things. The high matter swords, it's the best function I've seen of that in terms of providing like value and not being like convenient or having like some type of plot armor. And that I'm always like, yeah, why doesn't everybody have a lightsaber, right? So this series does that the best by far. Hey guys, I'm just adding some more thoughts to Disquiet Gods. You know, this is one of those series that always keeps you thinking, right? Like, what do I like? What I don't like? So that's something to be commended. But one of the things I'm not going to change my rating now, but I really thought about, upon reflection, I'm like, I really don't like that direction. And for Disquiet Gods, spoiler alert for previous books, is that I liked when the tension was just between, you know, the Ciel scene, and there were elements of higher species, higher intelligent beings, but in this book specifically, it felt too much, to the point where now in this series it feels too much good versus evil. And I don't know, like, I've never seen a better higher being, higher intelligent species done. Maybe I haven't read enough, but I don't know, it feels too much for me at this point. Like, that tension between the Ciel scene and the humans, a culture of clashes, culture of manipulation, how are these different cultures being manipulated by higher beings? These kinds of elements were very fascinating to me. And so, I don't know, this book felt a little bit too convenient for me, too convenient for Hadrian's journey. So upon reflection, I think it's a bit disappointing. It's still epic, it's still awesome. And I don't know, it makes me kind of want to give this book a 4.25 out of 5, with the same complaints of Ashes of Man, with the lack of side character arcs being kind of, I don't know, being not the downfall, there's no downfall to the series, but being the staunch negative of the series. So I just wanted to add those thoughts. I mean, these thoughts are about a week after reading the series, and you know what, F it. We're going 4.25 out of 5, because that element is kind of bothering me too much to keep it at 4.5 out of 5. Yeah, just compared to books 3 and 4 and the direction where that series was going. Like, I loved I loved when it was about the politicking, and there is that politicking in this book, but the politicking now is on like I'm okay with the backdrop being like the higher beings and the higher sentience, but and I don't know, like I like those elements. So, and 4.25 out of 5 is still very good, if not great. So I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm kind of scatterbrained with my thoughts at the moment, but yeah, maybe 4.25 out of 5, or 4.5 out of 5. I'm right there. So that's just something disappointing to me. Let me know what you guys think though. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm coming back. This is the third edit, but I have to go to 4.25 out of 5. It's bothering me too much. It's bothering me that this tension of the good versus evil being drawn too much towards that, because the villain in this book is so excellent. I love the villain in this book. I can't say the villain's name, but the villain is so good. And it kind of gets, I don't want to say erased, but erased with the God stuff, you know? Not erased, but it devalues it a little bit. And that's why I prefer that direction. I don't mind the direction of higher sentience beating, and as I've said before, and when it comes to being that done, it's one of my favorites that I've seen. But when it's too much, you know, it feels too convenient in some ways. And I know, like through the revelations and certain things we learn throughout the series, it's supposed to substitute for that convenience, right? It's supposed to not just be plot armor, right? That's the point at times, but I don't know. Like, I prefer the more on the ground gritty. Too much of that is, I don't know. That I'm a bit conflicted, and that's a good thing to have in a book, when you're conflicted between having greatness, like you awesomely loved it, blew your mind, or is it just excellent? Good problem to have, Christopher Ruocchio. So anyway, don't let that take away from the overall the series, is that this is still an excellent series. Awesomely written, superbly written. I'll buy anything Ruocchio writes. But that decision, again, will not put this in a top 3 series of all time for me, but still top 10 probably, so can't complain too much. I think that's a good segue. Let's talk about world building. I mean, this is a 4.5 out of 5. The world building in this, I mean, we're all highly invested in the Ciel scene, the extrasolarians, all these different world building elements. Sometimes though, this was a bit exposition heavy. Definitely felt a little bit of fatigue from that. You know, this was revelation after revelation, so there's a lot of exposition here provided by other characters. So that was a little bit hard hitting, but again, how the different world building elements interact with each other, I mean, it's magnificent. How does the Imperium interact with the extrasolarians? How do the extrasolarians, they have their own different types of subgroups, right? These are always going to be some of my favorites in science fiction, when we're having these different subgroups, the different cultures. I don't see as much of the culture building here, but we do see some of that in the Imperium with the Chantry, and there's a little bit more Ciel scene and these kinds of things. So I can't give it a masterpiece level, but this is definitely excellent. And again, revelation after revelation, Sanderlanche after Sanderlanche. We see a lot more history of some of the major stakeholders in this series, but certain specific world building elements felt a little bit gimmicky, in my opinion. Some of the stuff, especially near the end, and I don't want to say the name because it'll be a spoiler, but again, 4.5 out of 5. We're enjoying the series quite a bit. That kind of goes into, I think, a good segue, which will be characters. I have to only give this a 4 out of 5. I definitely feel a Hadrian Marlowe fatigue following one character, and that character arc not being extremely clear at times, and there's just not a lot to love about certain side characters. There's one villain in this book specifically that was definitely enjoyable, and sometimes certain world building elements have this kind of character arcs, and the Emperor is enjoyable to read and these kinds of things, but I don't know, I'm looking at like First Law, Red Rising, that they have a whole cast of characters that I'm always extremely excited to follow. But here we're only really focusing on Hadrian Marlowe. And this book does have a couple of new side characters introduced that I do enjoy, and I definitely was more invested in them than in some of book 2 or book 3's characters. But again, that's what this book is really suffering from, a lack of side characters or a lack of other POVs. It's making it, I don't want to say dry, because I'm giving this a 4.5 out of 5, but I can see why some people maybe would not be as invested as like a Wheel of Time or other book series like, any of the Words of Radiance, Way of Kings, all of these kinds of book series, because I don't want to say the melodramaticness gets repetitive. It's just that you don't have anybody else to invest in. So when we go away from Hadrian Marlowe, it's like, okay, what is this universe? And you definitely want to explore more of that through other POVs. So it gets a little bit difficult. And that kind of also goes into emotional impact, which I gave 4.25 out of 5. And again, that's the main deterrent from this series being a masterpiece to me, is just the lack of other character arcs. Especially, I think you can do that with a trilogy, maybe with 4 books, but with 7 books, it just becomes a bit difficult to me. So again, and a lot of those characters, like we do see some character arcs, but it definitely impacts the emotional impact. When one character returns in this book, and it's a happy reunion, you don't get to see that, at least some of that character arc on page. I'm not saying we need to see the entire character arc, but I don't want to feel the need to read one of the short stories or novellas to be able to understand that character arc fully. And yeah, we do get some conversations and dialogue that kind of provide some insight to that, but again, that definitely will always negatively impact the emotional impact. But with that being said, some epic moments throughout this series, some of the revelations, Hadrian Marlowe's journey in this, the different Imperium elements. I mean, this is definitely, once this book gets going, it's going, and it's been a pleasure to read this series. And I think some people are going to say this is their favorite science fiction series ever. I think there's going to be people like me that are going to say, yeah, maybe it's in my number 9 or number 10. And then some people are just going to really, really enjoy it. I don't see somebody who's being a science fiction fan not at least liking it. I don't see anybody disliking this series, but you know how that kind of stuff goes. So again, 4.5 out of 5. Let me know what you guys think, and see you for book 7. I'm very excited. Let's see how this series ends and how Hadrian Marlowe got his name.